Welcome to the X Podcast. You are listening to the sounds of wisdom and gold and more and brown. How are you, too?
I'm doing great.
Okay.
Wonderful.
How are you?
Well.
That's good.
Well, Cohen is starting to walk. We were just watching videos.
Yeah.
And Griffin's about to
Start crawling.
start calling.
He's like doing the baby push-up thing where he's like
Yeah.
working, grunting, getting there. He's very close.
Very close.
Yep. I'm proud of him. He's getting tough. Big. I'm
Yeah.
speaking linebacker thoughts to him.
I snuck around so if you're listening to this, you don't know, Cohen is Patrick Tim's great-grandson.
Great-grandson,
And,
stop.
Grandson.
And
Oh my
Griffin is Zachary's
Grandson.
son.
No.
And I snuck around through kids on Sunday during the 11:15, and I walked into a room.
10:45.
10:45.
Yeah, you keep saying the wrong time. You said that at
do.
hosting, too.
Did I really?
Yeah, you said,
Dang.
welcome to the X. Happens during 11:15. I went, no,
Dang.
it doesn't.
Dang.
Yeah.
These are the
Oops.
little things we notice.
Yeah, good. Keep me on my toes. But I walked back through during the 1:30, and I saw there were like 3 servant leaders in there, three ladies volunteering, and then turned around and it was Cohen. I immediately felt intimidated, and but he was so cute. He was so cute.
Why does a baby intimidate you?
I don't know, but he just has this intense look to his face.
Is it just Cohen or do all babies intimidate you?
No, just Cohen. It looks tough. It looks tough.
He is a tough cat. He's a tough
He's gonna be a
cat.
linebacker.
He's pretty strong. He's very strong, actually.
Is he?
Yeah, very strong. For his...
Linebacker or point guard? You probably prefer
He's
point.
probably linebacker based on his size, but we'll see if it stays that way. He's
Yeah.
already kind of thinning out a little bit just because he's very mobile now. But
Yeah.
he's a strong
People
dude.
lose the baby fat quick.
Well, we wrapped up in our faith community a series this Sunday called Meat and Three, which it's funny. I was doing pre-show and I accidentally called it Meat and Three because because I always make fun of my parents. And we talk about this like there's a southern kind of restaurant called Meat and Three
Oh,
that my parents love. It's like old style southern country cooking where you pick a meat and 3 vegetables.
oh.
So like on Sundays, a lot of times I'll be like,
So it's literally-
Mom, where'd y'all eat?
It's called
today?"
Meat and Three.
It's called not the restaurant's name is it's a type of restaurant.
Oh.
Like we went to a Meat and Three.
Oh.
Like instead of like a
We
cafeteria.
call it Cracker
or
Barrel
a-
around here.
Yeah, it would be
What's the difference?
What 3
Comes to-
vegetables would you pick right now?
at that kind of restaurant. I don't know. I
He'd probably say quinoa and
I mean the best things they would
Brussels
have.
sprouts and
Honestly, Brussels sprouts.
No,
and beets.
eggplant.
I had Friday.
beets.
Did have like extra crispy Brussels sprouts from Harvest Moon the other day.
What
with
is-
cilantro aioli.
Do
Those
you
are so
and
good.
eat 3 vegetables?
You know, I get that. You get 3 when you go to Cracker Barrel with the meals.
What-
Comes with 3.
Hey,
I
man,
just
that's it.
went there the other day because we had a gift card, and I went there and I got the mashed potatoes with gravy. I got the carrots, berry carrots, and I got the broccoli.
That's 3,
There you go.
That's what I got.
3 vegetables.
So that Cracker Barrel is our meat and 3
That's
up
your
here.
meat and three.
That's the
There you
that's
go.
the meat and 3 up here.
And you know what? I kind of like Cracker Barrel. It's nostalgic for me.
Yep,
They got
me
some good
too.
stuff. That Coca-Cola brownie cake. Oh my gosh, that's good. Anyways, Me and Three. And so we've not really had a big like podcast around vision and goals. Number one, I think we got a little tired of it because we talk.
We do it all the time.
We do it all the time. Plus, you know, we had a little bit of that conversation around the end of the year
Yeah.
and with our end of the year and then the beginning of the year. But we did talk about when we finished this series, we'd have at least a brief conversation around vision, goals, and the whole idea of Me and Three is we overestimate what we can do in the short term. We underestimate what we can do in the long term and who we can become in 3 years. And so I just thought it was one of the strongest series. You just did a masterpiece of each week and how to practically create margin, create focus, create intention towards who you're becoming. We had everybody write letters to their future selves that's going to be mailed back to themselves in 3 years
Yeah.
of this is who I'm going to become. And was really, really good. And so, you know, we haven't had any of these conversations with Zachary, so I'm going to call you for now, around the table. Any thoughts coming off the series or any Any crazy like goals this year? Any ways you've been looking at 2024?
I don't know if I've got any crazy goals. I think
Keep his baby alive.
exactly. Like, can we just make it through the year?
I
Like,
use
all in
you as
one
an
piece? You
example in
did.
this
Yeah.
one from our
You
conversation,
did.
right?
Yes.
You would represent maybe a
The
subset of people, right?
who have 4 kids who
Well, I don't know
young
about 4,
kids.
but yeah, a lot
young
of kids.
I have 4 under 7, so just keeping it straight. I don't know if I've got goals. I think a while ago I realized that if I just let myself go, I'm going to come up with like 30 goals and achieve maybe 2 of them.
What?
Stop.
What?
Don't know. Just, okay.
Anyways, so I think for me, one of the things I'm trying to do this year,
What are you laughing at?
Stop it. Stop it.
I don't even know. What
for the people who are watching,
Stop making that face.
Russ is laughing
I'm
at
not
some sort
making
of
a face.
that Pastor Tim is making.
I'm
I
not
don't know what's
making a
going on.
face.
I'm
I
blissfully
know.
looking in the
Okay.
camera
All
right
right.
now.
Okay.
You would have 30 goals if you. It was your. Anyways, I don't know what is going on here. Oh, we lost him. Okay.
Okay. I'm so sorry.
Oh man,
You are a goal-oriented person.
yes, I am. We all are.
Yeah.
But I've tried to move away from being that because it would ruin my life if I.
Well,
Ruin your life. That's a little extreme.
Trying to move away from goals because they ruined your
Well,
life.
I think what I'm trying to say is, let's bring it back. What
Okay.
I'm trying to say is, if I'm not careful, I can be overly ambitious.
Yeah.
And the amount of goals that I set.
Yeah.
And probably create too much internal pressure on myself to achieve those things.
Yeah.
So for a while, as a new year started, I've tried to be a little bit more realistic, and instead focus on like, okay, what's one thing you want to either grow in,
Yeah.
or what's an area that you want to try to, not to get overly spiritual, but become a better person, a better follower of Jesus. And so I think this year, one of the things I have trying to focus on is, okay, when I was saved, I really felt this sense of wonder, the sense of like, okay, closeness to who God is. And so, God, I just want to spend time in your presence this year. I want to get back to just almost like a childlike awe and wonder of who God is. So I find myself spending a lot of time just with him in prayer, doing different things like that, trying to read books that inspire those kind of thoughts,
It's awesome.
different things like that.
You're very spiritual. I love it.
Mm.
I love it. What about you?
Well, I think what you mentioned right there was kind of the crux of the message this
It
past
was, yeah,
week,
it
which
was.
is we can't just, I think, we can't have a huge list of all these goals and accomplishments and not actually have the time
Correct.
allotted to do it. And our conversations were that realistically, you're in a unique season where you have 4 little kids, and other than going to work, it's keeping them alive and
Healthy.
and you don't have a ton of extra time to do personal things. Some, but probably not a ton. And so I think that was just an important point for people, I think, to hopefully freeing, is to go in every season, pick a single focus.
Yep.
And that's kind of what you're talking about. And
Yep.
so, for me, I think the process of writing the letter was maybe the most powerful, because when you are forced to put down on paper and think it through, that's what I tried to do toward the end, and not just like, I think we're all really inspired at the beginning of a new year. Oh, I'm going to have these goals. I'm going to do all this stuff. And then you realize real fast, it's like, I'm never going to do all those. And if I have so many on my list, I might just get frustrated and give up.
Yep.
And so for me, like, really trying to focus on, I have a few, I'd say, professional things that I would love to see happen. One of them, releasing another book, possibly even have started on, and maybe going to be releasing another one by the end of 3 years. We'll see. I was working on it this morning. I'm really trying to get a good rhythm of a couple days, 3 days a week at least, trying to get some time to work on it. And so, I have a few things like that, but I really did try to put more of like personal, like development goals things that just being aware of in my own life, like who I am and who I'm going to be in 3 years and what matters.
Yeah.
And sometimes they don't feel like, for the Enneagram 3, they don't feel like, wow, you're not achieving that much. But I also think that I've learned enough that those are more important than checking off other things and other accomplishments.
Well, and I also think, too, it's probably really important context for people listening. Essentially, you brought up Enneagram, because I was going to bring up a lot of the three of us, by nature, are very high vision oriented.
Correct.
So we are not anti-vision, anti-goal. The three of us we're very different, but we're all Enneagram 3s, which means our bent is goals, our bent is progress, our bent is vision. And so for us, we probably, whereas a lot of people, maybe the challenge needed is to create goals, to write vision, to write. I think probably the three of us, depending on our place in the journey, kind of go back often to, okay, how am I staying healthy?
Yeah.
How am I setting not just external goals, but internal goals? And so it's interesting you mentioned the writing the letter. I mentioned a couple years back I did Donald Miller's logotherapy thing, and where he takes you through this whole process where you actually end up writing your eulogy. Yeah. You start with the end in mind, and then you backtrack from that 10 years, 15 years, and then all the way down to a personal code of this is what I want to be, down to, okay, here's some practical goals. Yeah. And so I did my last year. I wrote out a whole lot of vision. Part of that was because I felt like my soul needed it. Yeah. I needed to write vision to fill myself back up with hope and to fill myself back up with intention. This year, I started back in November writing out a lot of different things for the year. So I have kind of like a mental map. But it's interesting. Maybe like you two, this is the first year in a long time I don't have a whole list of all these goals. Like I have some things written down. Yeah. But I have more, I guess, like directions. Yeah. That I'm going to go. Yes. I have internal directions for who I'm becoming. I have directions. There's already things on the map and in progress on the railroad tracks as far as the book and different things like that. But I have more like, okay, I know where I need to go as a person. I know where I need to go in certain areas of my life and who I want to become.
Yeah. I love the language of that because that's how I felt when I was writing it. And I wanted to try to create a little bit of that in the series, but like I don't know if I leaned into it enough, but I love the language of I wanted to define the direction that I'm going for these 3 years. So because some of them is like it's hard to hit, especially when you have dreams. I think sometimes it's really hard to map a dream or an ideal. Yeah. I think you can map your step. Yeah. The next step. Like if you go, I want to do this in life, and I probably need to have a degree in that or whatever. Well, then, hey, I want to start into school doing at least one class a semester. Would love to maybe be graduating in 3 years. Yeah. But if not, you know what I mean? And so I feel like I did that with some of mine, even some professional things that I just kind of wrote to myself. They were like, I want to figure out how to move in this direction and build this. I don't know what it looks like. Yeah. And so, you know what I mean? And so it was really hard for me on some things. I think some dreams are a little bit nebulous. That they're just like, I know it's there. Obviously, you're never going to get there unless you start defining the steps. And so to me, it was more about defining the steps than it was the end point.
Which is good.
For those for me, for some of those things in the next 3 years.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm curious because I think the three of us are, vision-oriented people and have goals and dreams for generally who we are and what we want to do. I'm curious for both of you because I know how it worked out for me, but as you guys, this is maybe go back to as you were starting to feel the call into ministry or like to even plant a church or start a church or do whatever. I know you told this story before or for you getting into ministry, like how did you begin to even define your passion or your desire within those specific things? I'm not talking about calling, but just how did you even okay, I like to communicate, I like to write, I like to, these are expressions for things that I want to do and accomplish. What was your working out of that process to even uncover that those were things you wanted to do?
Well, I would say and I think maybe we're all a little bit different how we got to where we are. In my experience, I felt more of a calling to a role of a pastor than I did any specific duty of a pastor. Like, I didn't know squat about preaching, leading. I had been involved in levels of leadership in a lay role in a church. So my calling was more to a function than it was a specific area or whatever. I feel like, and then as I moved toward that role and that function, it defined for me what I needed to grow in and what skills I needed.
Okay.
And so I ended up developing the skills because of the need of the function of what I felt like I was called to do. So, and I think the danger a little bit, and I think sometimes in the world we're in today is flipping it the other way, is that we can desire a particular skill somebody has or a particular, thing that we see, and it may not be really connected to the function or the calling of what we've been called to do necessarily. And so, for me, it wasn't like, I saw preachers that I admire and go, well, one day I want to be a preacher. In fact, to be honest, the communicators that we grew up with, or not really grew up with, my dad was a preacher, he was good, but, when I was at the church before we left, I mean, yeah, it was not what I envisioned. It wasn't what it was honestly, even just from just say the role of communicating on a platform, preaching the Bible, all this, that I almost didn't even think about that until we were weeks out, and I was like, oh, I have to prepare a message. Like, the vision was just, I want to create a church that the unchurched would love to go to. I want to create a space that would welcome people. I want to see people's lives changed. Literally, all of our conversations were about that. There was not one conversation in the 2 years or so of planning that we ever had as a team, or I don't even remember even thinking about it, ever.
Yeah.
And then it was a couple weeks out, and we were finally getting the building done, and it was like, oh, we're gonna have our first. We had our first what do you call them, soft open. It was just our team, and 3 weeks before our launch, and we were going to have church. And I was like, oh, I have to preach a message. I've never preached a full message before.
That's interesting.
Okay. I got to start creating one. And I had no idea how to. But it was never dawned in my mind. I never thought about organizational structure. I never thought, I want to be a great organizational leader. I love thinking about organizations and layers and, culture. And none of that. Which is probably why it was so slow getting started on it, because I was just ignorant of all of that.
Yeah.
I think it's hard. I think it's hard to be ignorant today of a lot of that stuff. I feel like we're exposed to so much now that I don't know if it makes it more complicated for people who feel a sense of calling. But back then it was more simplistic. It was just like, I feel called in the ministry. I want to serve God. I don't know how it looks, but I'm in. Well, and then when an opportunity presents itself, I really felt like this is it.
Yeah. Well, this is a double-edged sword of the age that we live in. We're in the information age now.
I know.
And so there's just so much more available to us. So as you even starting to think about what you want to do or a goal you have or who you want to become, it'd be easy just to get on the internet and just start searching, how do I do this?
Yeah.
And there's all this stuff comes at you versus...
Or it's like, I've got to have a good social media profile. I got to become a social media influencer and post, one time every day, some kind of inspiring thing, because that's how you start a church, right? I've got, what I mean? You almost take on all of these things, whereas I think maybe it was a little simpler.
Yeah.
I was a little oblivious.
Yeah, mine, the only difference of mine would be, I'm sure there are others, but one of the main differences is it took me a long time to even think through the idea of a role. I've shared before, I think part of my calling came with the way my personality is wired, is I'm just an all-in person. So the moment I had an encounter with Jesus, and I got obsessed with the idea I could have a relationship with God, the calling seemed to be instantaneous I can't do anything else in my life. But in that moment, I never thought, here's what this looks like. In fact, until 5 or 6 years ago, I'd sworn off the idea of ever being a lead pastor. Still don't know if that's ever something, but I never really became ambitious in terms of this is a role I want to go after. And then as far as this quote unquote, I guess functions or skills, for me, it was what I was already doing. So before I gave my life to Jesus, I'd been obsessed with writing since I was in first grade. I'm the nerd that was writing like essays and reports on aliens and dinosaurs and ghosts. So the moment I got, just obsessed with Jesus in 7th grade, I started writing literally chapters of books in 7th grade on my own.
Yeah.
Without ever even a thought that it'd be published.
Yeah.
Just because I was like, it was almost like an extent of my worship and my affection and my passion. I can't not write about it. Same with speaking. Like I'd always been, I'd always felt whatever, whether it was good or bad or great or mediocre, this leadership ability to influence people to do stuff. And so, I gave my life to Jesus, and then youth pastor comes in and says, I want you to speak. I'm like, okay. And it just kind of went from there. And so in a way, what you said is kind of where I was going to go. I think it's got to be really easy to get wonky today on motive and calling. I mean, it probably makes both of us sound old, but I'm actually really glad that all of this happened before ministry was sexy or before online and social media existed.
Yep.
I actually think that, as imperfect as I am already, I think it was probably the grace of God on my life that it probably was a little bit more of just like naive David in the fields falling in love with God and then finding a way forward.
Yeah. I'm curious, there's a guy that we all love, Erwin McManus, and I was listening to a book of his recently. He described himself as like an architect of the mind. This is what I think he used. And so you guys don't have to share if you don't want to or without being too personal, but from your letters, I'm just curious, like if you had to describe maybe some of either your goals or where you're going, what you want to do, but if you had to like label your passions or your personalities in such a way, like what would Russ Moore label himself as? What would Tim Moore label himself as, like in terms of?
Well, my letter and my description would probably be different. I don't know why, but my mind goes back to Kevin kind of putting us on the spot with this question of what we would look at ourselves at if we had to remove false modesty, like how we would. And that, for me, I've always loved the idea of being a passionate inspirer to cause people to dream they can go further in God than they ever thought. They can experience more of life than they ever thought they could. I think that would be one of my core things is passion and trying to inspire people. That didn't make it on my letter though.
Yeah, that's what it would make sense that would make it on your letter. That there'd be things around that you would.
Yeah, my letter was, and maybe it did, and I'm not thinking of it correctly. I think I told you because we were afterwards. We chatted briefly. My letter was kind of like half who I want to become, half what I want to do. So I really like. I mean, I won't get too personal, but I mean, a lot of it was just like it started with. I think the older I get, the more I just want to be well in soul.
Yep.
And I wrote in 3 years, I want to be well. Like I want my soul to be well. I want to be even more full of peace. I want unhealthy mindsets, patterns, fear, guilt, shame, insecurity. I just want to have less and less and less and less of that, and more of just peace and joy and wholeness. I want to be physically healthy. I just want to be healthy.
Yeah.
And that's such a buzzword now, but that was a lot of it.
Yeah.
This is the kind of person of health I want to be.
Yep.
This is the kind of person of wholeness I want to be. And then probably the middle portion was some stuff that's kind of in my control. Like, these are the kind of books I want to put out. I want to be thriving as a leader. I want to, these, I put some financial goals, of house and savings and giving. And the last part is probably stuff that I don't have as much control over. God, I'd love to, meet the woman of my dreams and be married and have a little Russ Jr. run the house around the way. Like, I guess part of it was who I want to become, what I want to do, and who I want to be with, and in that was community as well. Like, I want to be thriving in community, friendships, relationships.
I love that passionate inspirer view through that lens.
Is that accurate?
I think so. Most people would probably describe you in that way.
There you.
I got nothing. I don't know how to label myself. So, what I can say is the things that, the way I approached it.
Yeah.
That just my letter. It was probably was a little bit organized and I would say somewhat analytical a little bit in just the way I thought. And maybe it's just I was thinking about how I break down. When you think holistically, I'm like, okay, personal or physical. Mm-hmm. So I had just a couple things on there, physical, and they weren't crazy, but it's just like one of it is I want to be able to maintain my weight. I want to be able to maintain 4 days a week at the gym. Mm-hmm. I want they weren't like, I want this, that. It was just more of like when I think about myself 3 years from now, and I'm just like, I want to keep those rhythms. I guess so. I applied some rhythms in that. So I mentioned physical. I mentioned family goals. Mm-hmm. And some of them just have to do with season. It's just we're more in transition of season,
yes,
whereas you're in the middle of season for a while, whereas we're transitioning in season. And so, we were talking about that. And I even had just some fun family goals. Like I would, for, Lorelei and I to be able to travel to like this kind of place or this kind of place maybe. Mm-hmm. And for our whole family to be able to do a trip like this. So I have a defined one specific. I've told her, and then I had some professional things, some personal professional ones that are, whether it's writing or some other things that I'm trying to create, and even right now. And then I had like one or two, but it wasn't crazy, just ministry goals that were kind of like, I would love to be able to see. It wasn't, I didn't try to put, I've done that too many times that I feel like it's bitten me, that I stopped, like, it's like, by this date, we're going to have, like, no, by this date, I would love to, or be moving in this direction to already. And so I left it a little bit more open-ended, knowing I know where we're headed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's, what about you?
I knew you were going to ask that question. I don't know if I've got words yet that I would maybe frame or categorize what I'm passionate about or what I want to do for people. The two words that probably rattle around in my head the most are authentic and or vulnerable. I want to strive to be that way, good or bad, take me or leave me. Like this is how I want to operate and live my life. So probably working out the expression of what that looks like. But yeah, I think for me, as I was approaching the letter and approaching just how we're going to do things, I told you, I think my focus has been for a while, for so many years, who am I becoming? Mm-hmm. I want to be healthier. There's several areas in my life that I feel like over the last year, just God has highlighted. I want to have less shame. I want to have less insecurity, less pride, just several different things. I'm just like, okay, how do I just, God, would you just come in and highlight the shadow parts of my personality that I know about, that maybe not everyone else sees or knows about, but you know, God, and I know, and if we can eliminate those things, then there's going to be more space for me to step into what you've called me to do and what you want me to do.
Yeah.
Do you have? I'm really curious. I think those kind of ones are, like I said, I think the personal, formational, developmental type of aspirations are more important than the achievements. So I think those are like, amazing. And that's why I started off my letter with, this is a quality or a trait that I talked about on Sunday about generosity, and I have a giving goal. It's one of my only, it's like I want to get here, and I'm like, God, I don't know that it's going to be possible unless you also help me here. It's like I want to, I'm not really sure I can get there on my own, but
it's like, where do my goals mix with big prayers?
Yeah, so, and that's fine. I want to move in that direction. Having that goal will inspire me to move in that direction, and faith would say, start moving in that direction, even if you haven't seen the other thing, right? That's where the faith comes in. Right. But I think one of the most challenging things about personal development goals is that it's one thing for us to recognize them. It's another thing to figure out how to take steps to address them. And I think those particular type of goals are the most challenging. Because I think they're the kind that we can stick down on paper and go, this is what I want. But it's the achievement style goals that we can pinpoint the steps to get there and usually define them. I think those are harder. You know what I mean? It's like I want less shame. I want less this, less insecurity, less this. Like the ones you were mentioning. Like those are, these things shape who we are, which affects how we parent, affects how we are a spouse, affects how we do our. They're huge. I think those are the challenge on those is like, how do I move toward that?
Well, I think it's a good question. But I would answer it in two ways, at least the way I'm thinking about it. The first one, a lot of those things are tied to probably specific instances in a childhood or mistakes in the past or whatever it is. And so a lot of times the way you attack those things is probably getting with a good therapist, digging into some hard conversations with people and really being honest. What's the whole circle thing, like getting your group of 1 to 5 intimates, like, okay, here's some things I want to attack. And so I'm doing this with a therapist, but then also like, can you guys hold me accountable as we move in this direction? And here we go. I think that's one way. The other way, again, this is super, super spiritual, but just spending time in the presence of God. How do I just sit? I don't know, I'm going to badly misquote this. I don't know if it was C.S. Lewis or your Mr. Quote guy, but I heard recently that you can be changed literally just sitting in the presence of God, and as you look at him, he looks at you, that just that itself can begin to shape and form you. And so, like, how do I just let God's love just mold me, shape me, change who I am, change my perspectives? And again, this is a very spiritual answer, but I think the practical, real life, having the conversations, doing those things with the spiritual, I think that's how you begin to move beyond just the I'm doing these things, I'm stepping in these directions, I'm achieving these goals. No, I'm actually going to address the things that are deeper underneath the surface in our lives.
That's great. I appreciate you sharing it, and I think it's great because I know anybody listening, if they're honest, we all have those areas that we are just aware of, that we're like, okay, I got to address that. And how twisted my mind works when you're talking, the pastor side of me heard the alliteration of 3 steps that you outlined.
Here we go.
Past, presence, practical. Address the past, get in God's presence, practical steps forward. And I do think it takes all 3. And one of the things I may have mentioned this in one of the ones we did in the fall, but one of the people we listen to talks a lot about the power of whatever you need to work on. What is your first step, and will you take it today? And when I was in Egypt, I don't know why, but one morning when we had to get up stupid early, it was like 5 a.m. This whole thing rushed into my brain of this personal code journal I want to create one day. But part of it goes down to writing out the words of who you want to become. And I thought, how fun would it be if you created a system where so I called it my dirty dozen. I created 12 words. These are 12 words that I want to move towards. It was courage, humility, different things. And I tried this. I only did it for a couple months. I need to create a system where I do it. But I would pick a word either for the week or for the day and say, okay, this is my word. What steps am I going to take today to become that person? And so I had to actually take action steps. So if it was humility, it's like, okay, that sounds really lofty. How am I going to express humility today? How am I going to serve today? How am I going to... And so I do think there's a lot of power in that. As I think a lot of people don't address the past. They don't do the hard work. I think I've had seasons in my life where I read so many contemplative books and went to counseling so much and dug up the past so much that my problem was I just didn't want to do the steps forward.
Yeah.
And so probably all of us are in different places. But it really does take all 3 that I think you
really
laid
does.
out.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's good.
Anyways, we've gone in a different direction than we planned to. Should we call this one a day and do the other one later? I have a thought. I'm curious. You're kind of on the whole ministry front, because we've talked about how even ministry mindset and goals have changed all that. I heard something that I thought was and maybe it won't fascinate anybody else. I found it fascinating. Chris Hodges, who him or Craig Rochelle one has the largest church in America. And Chris Hodges is known for creating Growth Track and a lot of small groups. He's really well known in the church world. And he is a brilliant strategist. I mean, just systems, organized, everything. But I heard him on some sort of like Grow Leader podcast or at the end of the year. And he said something I thought was really interesting. He said, yeah, people call me a strategist. I'm not a strategist. And they were like, wait, what? You're not a strategist? And he was like, no, I've never had a strategy to grow. He said, I'm an opportunist. He said, my every mechanism is for health. He said, and to be healthy in our margin, to be healthy in our finances, to be healthy in our emotional and spiritual health, to be healthy as a team. He said, that way, when a strategic opportunity comes, I strike. I just thought that was really interesting. I don't know. It was an interesting mindset. And I'm just curious because I know you probably would say you look at the future. And I think everybody since COVID looks at the future differently. But I think you've said you look at the future differently now when it comes to like church strategy than you probably did 5 years ago.
Yeah.
What do you hear or think when you hear that? Are you similar in a way, different? What?
I think for a long time I was probably less like that. I think I've become more like that. Like I'd rather just. I think I'm probably thinking about strategy more in what is available and the opportunities, and to do things. I think before. So I think maybe the difference between a strategist is somebody who defines a strategy and then makes it happen. I think an opportunist is somebody who is, like you said, maybe he's focused on health and who they are, and as opportunities come, they're able to move in a different direction or change. And I think for a big portion of just the ministry in the years, I would have said I'm more of a strategist, where it's like I would define the strategy I want to go down and then move pieces to make that happen.
Which isn't bad.
It's not bad.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I would, the two people you named, I would imagine, I mean, I don't know, but I would imagine Craig Rochelle is more of the strategist. Like, to me, he seems like the guy that a long time ago figured out, here's what we're going to build and replicate, and here's how we're going to scale it, and we're just going to do it.
Yep.
And there, it isn't bad because Craig Rochelle also knows the power of being healthy. And, so.
And they're both obsessed with systems.
Yes, they are. They're both. And so I think I probably would have admired maybe someone more like Craig Rochelle years ago, whereas I might admire more the approach of Chris Hodges today. I'd find that probably more appealing than I do the other one. So, but I think, again, there's not a right or wrong. I think it's a little bit how you're wired. I think it's a lot. I think my guess is Chris Hodges has always been that way.
Yeah.
And I think Craig Rochelle's probably always been the way he is.
And I bet anybody that would watch Chris Hodges would be like, oh, you're very strategic.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a difference between being strategic and being calculated a little bit. I don't know if maybe he's not the person that loves to picture. Like, he might not be the one where he's like, oh, I want to have 30 campuses in 30 years.
Yeah.
Like, I almost kind of get the feeling that maybe that's not the topic of conversation. I mean, sure, he probably does, but it's not. Whereas I have a feeling Craig Rochelle is more, I don't know, strategic in that way. Like, I think he has a very intentional plan to take over America. I actually don't think.
In a good way.
I actually don't. Yeah, in a good way. I actually don't think it's close. I think Craig Rochelle's church is probably double the size of Chris Hodges. I'm not joking.
Yeah.
I think they had like over 140,000 people for Easter or Christmas.
Crazy.
Or something stupid. I mean, they have 45 locations.
It's crazy,
and there probably isn't one of them that's under 2,000.
All right, I'm gonna
think about it.
It is
since you kind of took us somewhere deep, I'm gonna end deep. Put you both on the spot.
Oh, no.
Eulogy test.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Yeah.
Zachary, what would you want people to say about you at your funeral?
What do I want people to say about me?
He was authentic. He was vulnerable. I'm just regurgitating your words.
And he loved well.
And he loved well.
He was authentic and he loved well.
Those are I was putting words in your mouth. I was just regurgitating what you said earlier. You need to give your own words. Start your eulogy now. Go.
Gosh. No, he was a great father.
Thank you for coming today.
Thank you for coming
We're
today.
here to celebrate the life of
he was a
Zachary.
great father. He was
Toes
always
in the
himself.
sand, Brown.
He was always himself, and he loved well. I mean, that's in my 15 seconds of reflection based off of this.
Yeah.
What I got for you.
Wait, did you write your eulogy out?
I did. It was 2 years ago. I don't have it still. I don't remember it, but
What do you mean you don't have it?
How do you not?
You wrote it out.
How do
I
you
don't have
not
it with
remember
me.
it?
So you didn't take a picture of it on
I
your
mean,
phone?
it was like
Do you want to get
it
it
was
out
like
and
a
read
whole
it?
type page.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember the gist of it. Like
I mean, how well did you give it?
what do you mean?
The eulogy. How well did you
Well, I
deliver
didn't
it?
deliver it.
Oh,
I
you
haven't.
hadn't- you didn't-
I have not.
you didn't
died
practice
and come
it?
back yet.
You didn't practice it?
No, I'm not one of the two witnesses, nor Jesus. But yeah, no. I mean, in general,
You could record yourself giving your own eulogy,
That's true.
and then they could play it.
That would be
that's true.
very
What about
awesome.
you?
That'd be cool. Not really. Eulogy? That's so morbid. I don't
No.
like to think about that. But
Better to go to house in the morning.
what was the question? Like,
mean, the
what,
whole
what do you
idea
want,
is you-
what do you
the re-
want said?
It's
or-
morbid, but it's also exciting because the whole idea is to reverse engineer your
No,
life.
I agree. That's what I do with. That's what I do with a lot of things. I think about, where do you want to be?
Mm-hmm.
You just picture
Yeah.
like this is what I want to be able to do, and so how do I start building it now?
Yeah.
What would I want said? I mean, can I say outside of the?
Great Father, authentic.
Yeah, I mean, can I say outside of like?
It's hard to answer.
But I feel like it's okay. Can we say that there's a given, or maybe I need to say it so it's not just a given?
Okay.
That I think wanting the highest calling is next to following Jesus is really your family, and so I would want to I would want. So what would I want my kids and grandkids, maybe great grandkids? I'm so young, got started. I mean, when you're 30 years old and you got a grandchild, you got to. I think there's a level of like I would want them to admire my faith. I'd want them to say he was faithful and steady and trustworthy, and I think there's the family aspect of the way I want my family or friends to have seen me.
Yeah.
I think that's, can I put that aside for a minute? Like beyond that, I would want people to say that he impacted my life in a significant way.
Yep.
Just the way he lived, his message. I feel like we all kind of have a message, his message or whatever impacted our lives. I think that would be a great thing to have. It's sad because funerals are different because of different circumstances. I've officiated and been at funerals, people that live to be 90 something years old, and there's 30 people who show up because everybody else they knew died and they outlived them all. And there's the people that die, it seems way too young, or it feels. And there's tons of people because they were, I think, on the, I don't know if it's a selfish side, but part of me would hope that there'd be a lot of people who would show up. Does that sound really
No,
egotistical?
everyone
I don't,
wants
not
that.
because like, I didn't go pay my respects, but I would want to know that the way I live my life
Impacted
moved
a lot
and
of people.
touched so many people that they would just want to show up for a moment to support
Yeah.
the family. You know what I mean? To
Yeah.
do that. I think that would be, and I don't know if I'm quantifying that very well.
That's
Yeah,
good.
But
that's good.
I mean, I don't know about what being said.
And at least a few chronic depressions out of it.
Yeah. I want people to be miserable.
Yeah.
I want people to be miserable for a long time.
So yeah, that's good.
Okay.
That's good.
That's really good.
Did you have anything
Did
that
you remember-
really,
did you
or did
remember
you
yours?
say? I mean,
No, I mean, I want to be. Let me talk about this before. Like, I love what was said of Enoch. He walked with God. I wanted to be said. He walked with God. I love that whole David line. He served his generation. That he fulfilled his calling. I want it to be said by people. I felt loved by him. That there was a zest for life that made me excited about life. I would love to be somebody that could make people excited about
actually,
life.
let's record it so we don't have to
Zest.
worry about
A zest for life.
what to say. I'll
Yeah.
just record it and
No,
just
it's
go.
okay.
Oh.
It's all right. Yeah, I would love to be somebody that that would become the kind of person that moments with me would impact them the way they think. That moments that I could have eventually an impact that would impact the way people think and the way they love and the way they feel and the way they serve and lead. Like you, I love that word impact. Yeah, that'd be some of it.
Did you cry when you wrote your eulogy?
I did not.
I would love for it to be. This is, my wife's always said this too. I would love for it to feel like an actual celebration type thing instead of, I've been to different ones.
People will be eating cake at yours.
I'm good with that.
So no 30 days of mourning for Moses?
Well, you can do that after.
Oh, okay.
But let's first have the party.
Is it selfish to say that there should be 30 days of mourning than 30 days of feasting?
No.
So 60 days. People need to take
Well,
off
they
work.
did 70 days, I think, if I recall, when Jacob died.
Mm-hmm.
There was 30 days or something mourning
Took his
there.
bones back to
Then
Egypt.
they had 30 days for embalming.
Oh, yeah, they did.
They had 30
because
days
they
of
did
embalming.
travel back to
Then they
Egypt.
went to take him there. Then they had a week before they crossed over into Canaan or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then they did something else. It was 70 days of mourning for Jacob. I'm
Mm-hmm.
geez, he wasn't even that good of a guy.
And
Israel.
honestly, one of the good things, one of the things that should happen too is at some point after the funeral, kind of like Elisha, someone should accidentally fall in my casket and be raised back to life. Just because they touched my bones and anointing's so strong.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay.
we've gone off script, but I think it's been a good conversation.
Yeah.
It was.
The one last thing that I've been messing around that you asked
Okay.
that question. I don't have an answer for it, but I do have a word.
Okay. What's your
Oh,
word?
okay, John Gordon, you got a word of the year?
No.
No.
Oh.
It's a word. It's a word for. It's a word. It's weird because this particular word has been swimming in my head for a while now, as I think about kind of the future and even just some of the future endeavors and other things of what I love to do. That I keep coming back to. That I feel like I don't know if it's maybe my passion or my niche.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what I want to do?
I'm excited for this.
It's kind of a vague word, but
Yeah.
I will explain. But it is the space that I love to live in.
Yep.
Okay, and it's the word intersect. I don't have. Why are you laughing? I don't have a great definition for it, but let me explain it. Because you're going back to how would you define yourself in at least in some regards. And I know that's a weird one. I love the space that I love to live in is the intersection of faith and things that are not.
Yep.
That is my favorite. Mm-hmm. I don't I don't know how to describe what that means. So I'll leave that. And if you guys have any profound ways, it'd be nice to be able to put some kind of label on yourself a little bit and go, well, this is what I love to do. It's
Yeah.
But
You're the
whether
prophet
it's whether
that
it's
builds bridges.
whether it's I thought about the word bridge, but it's the whole you guys know I love where faith and science intersect.
Yeah.
And I love meddling in that space. I love where faith and business intersect. And I love, I like to bring concepts. I feel like I try to do that with preaching. It's here's a spiritual concept. Here's a biblical concept. Here's real life. Here's where people are. And trying to figure out how to bridge. That was the other term that was coming to my mind too, a bridge, but like a bridge builder or whatever.
Yeah.
But more in terms of that,
That's
that
cool.
thought. To me, that's where it's where I keep going in everything I aspire to create.
I love that.
I don't know what that means. I wish there was a better architect of
Well,
the mind. I
you're-
wish there was a better term for
You're an
it.
itinerant intersectionist.
Okay.
I knew it would be 2 eyes.
You know what? You made
Nice
us
alliterated.
answer. You didn't answer.
What?
Well, so
He gave descriptions.
you had
authentic and-
what do you see? And mine is hopefully I'd like to be someone.
Passionate.
I'd like to be someone who
passioner.
passionately inspires people.
Passionate inspirer.
You'd like to be an intersectionist.
I like to be an
itinerantly.
intersectionist.
An itinerant
I'm going to create a new one.
intersectionist?
I'm an intersectionist. That's it. That's the term. I'm an intersectionist.
Zachary, what are you?
Ask me later.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't know if I know right now.
All right.
That word literally has been in my head for the last 2 weeks. So that's why I was like, well, I could at least mention the word that I've been when you asked me that, but I feel like there's no good way to define that, at least not unless I just say, well, I'm an intersectionist.
Well,
What the heck does that mean?
you're a paradigm parishioner.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Okay.
thank you for joining us. Send us your eulogy. at podcast at
This is your
church.
eulogy.
And we'd love to read it out loud with name and
That's
address.
fun. Actually,
honestly.
why don't you bring your eulogy in and we'll read that one out loud.
Yes.
All right, we'll definitely pray about
We will.
that.
Okay.
Intersectionist. Hopefully, this conversation has stirred, encouraged, provoked, and challenged, and inspired, and
Intersected.
Yourself wherever
in
you are.
whatever word he
Authentically.
chooses later.
Yeah.
In an
the mi-
authentic manner
I'm the middleman.
that makes you feel loved. So-
Authentic lover.
Oh,
okay. And with that,
Yeah.
we close this week's episode of the X Podcast. Sorry for any virgin ears listening. We love you, and we'll see you next week.
Hey guys, it's Russ. Thanks so much for listening. We really believe if we can get around tables instead of behind screens, if we can talk to each other instead of at each other, we can make the world better. To help us do that, here are a few things you can do to help. First, if you haven't yet, leave a review on Apple or Spotify and hit subscribe on YouTube. This helps more than you know. Also, if you have been impacted by the community out of which this podcast comes, that's X Church. Maybe you're local or you've been touched by the messages and impact across the country, even the world. I want to encourage you to support this work. A powerful life principle is to invest in the people and places that invest in you. And so I want to invite you to do that right now by going to thex.church/give. You can give a one-time small gift, a sacrificial gift, or even become a recurring partner. Together, let's keep elevating the conversation, thinking higher, loving deeper, and making the world better. Cheers.